Hello, YouTube. I just wanted to respond to a couple of comments, and Hyploday left a video response for me, so I'm going to try and address the points that are left on there. Um, I have YouTube up on my phone, so hold on. Okay, MK Ultrawide says, okay, wait, so in the first 2 minutes of your video you're going to redefine the words and meaning of objective morality. How the hell can an argument be meaningful if everybody wants to use their own definitions, and mix in their own subjectivity? If you don't know what the terms mean, there are tons of online dictionaries of philosophy. Go look it up before you start. Alright. What he doesn't get there is that, like, I do know what the terms mean. I object to the word objective and morality being put together. That's not a real position, right? His name is Caesar, by the way. I mean, I guess you can describe yourself that way. That's cool, but I mean, for instance, just take a. I also pulled up on here, just Wikipedia, right? Typed in objective morality into Wikipedia, and this is what you get. You get moral objectivism may refer to robust moral realism, the meta-ethical position that ethical sentences express factual propositions about robust or mind-independent features of the world, and that such propositions are true, right? Which is what I think people who label themselves as subscribing to objective morality really mean, is that they're more realists. The second one is moral universalism. The meta-ethical position that some system of ethics or morality is universally valid without any further semantic or metaphysical claim. Now, that is Kant's position, for instance, moral universalism, rather than moral realism, right? Kant's claim is that ethics is subjective and universal. So the point is when you really start unpacking the words subjective and objective, they don't really apply as neatly to moral systems as you think you do. So this is why I was expressing I don't know what that means. It wasn't because I don't know what these terms mean. It was because I don't think that the position, it's not that I'm redefining the terms. It's that the people who use the term objective morality are redefining the terms, right? So you should direct that criticism at them, not at me. Then Hyploday posted a video response, and there are a few points in there that were interesting. I'm going to touch on 2 points. First of all, he objects to my definition of ethics, on the grounds that he says it's radical, and I don't really think it's that radical. It emerges from a different tradition of philosophy than people in the YouTube community might be privy to, right? So there's the analytic tradition of philosophy, which is people like Quine and Thomas Kuhn and Bertrand Russell and all of these names, mainly Anglo-American philosophers, and they sort of produce. I think that contemporary YouTube atheism really emerges from Anglo-American philosophy. There's this idea that this is the serious philosophy, right? I remember Foucault saying, he starts out a lecture with saying, first of all, like, I want to say once and for all, I'm not a structuralist, and nor am I an Anglo-American analytic philosopher, because nobody is perfect, right? So the Anglo-American philosophers are sort of mainly like logicians, philosophers of science. Dan Dennett is an analytic philosopher, right? And that's all cool. It's not where my interest in philosophy lies, though. The other side of it is the continental tradition, which is where my interest is and kind of always has been. And it goes back. Analytic philosophy is the newer branch, right? The analytic philosophers really begin with the logical positivists, and in the early 20th century, you can trace their roots back further. Maybe someone like Huxley could be seen as a proto-analytic thinker. Um, but the continental tradition, I mean, really it gets inaugurated with Descartes, goes into Kant, goes into Hegel, Nietzsche, Kierkegaard, Heidegger, uh, I don't know, the structuralists, Levi-Strauss, Marx, right? The Marxist tradition is part of the continental school. Um, uh, I don't know. Then you move on to the post-structuralists, the postmodernists, right? These people who are, I don't think anybody really knows what they're talking about, but everybody seems to hate them for for some reason. Um, uh, like Dawkins is really, really, really like vitriolic against the postmodernists. I don't know why. But Freud is usually thought through in the continental tradition. Uh, Lacan is a post-Freudian figure, and I don't know. So you have these two different strains, and they've kind of begun to collapse together a little bit more. Um, but my definition of ethics would be, I think, right at home in the continental tradition. Um, it's not, you know, it's kind of mundane in the continental tradition. When you look at it from an analytic perspective, it might seem strange or radical or something. Um, so that's where I would qualify that. I don't think it's actually that radical. Um, the And I also want to say the system that I outline. I don't really want to use the word system because I don't think it's particularly systematic. Um, uh, is it's built off of, it very much follows from the continental tradition. Um, so Levinas is one of the great continental ethicists, and I would very much recommend you look through some of Levinas's philosophy. He was building off of Husserl and Heidegger, and um, just writes beautifully moving ethical writing. And his whole thing is ethics as first philosophy, right? So ethics comes before ontology. Ethics is the primary thing that we should be concerned about. And it's all about care of the other and all of this. And he starts everything with the face-to-face encounter with the other, the immediate face-to-face encounter with the other, and trying to describe it. He he has probably like 40 different descriptions of this, right? And that's there's kind of a storytelling aspect to it. This is something common in continental philosophy. Like the existentialists were continental thinkers as well. So the idea of storytelling and narration is something that's a part of continental philosophy. So he tries to get at it by sort of narrating this encounter in different ways from different perspectives and all of this. And it's very beautiful and very very moving. And yeah, so I think then also I talk about intersubjectivity. This is something that I butt heads about, and I think that there's a whole lot of confusion that emerges around this, right? So the subjective and object, excuse me, subject-object distinction is not it's not binary. It's not a dichotomy, right? So not subjective does not equal objective. Not objective does not equal subjective. So the third term that gets put in there, it's introduced, I believe, by Husserl and and is later fleshed out in fields of sociology, and sort of culminates really, really to a fever pitch in someone like Jürgen Habermas. But I think it's essential to understanding the subject is intersubjectivity, right? So the idea that societies have emergent properties, emergent rules that can't be reduced to a group of individuals, right? Um, that are just communicative. You know what I mean? Stuff like I hold the door for another person. That's a norm, right? It's, I mean, in principle, I guess you could understand that by looking at like the neurology of the two people involved. But it's like the least efficient way to understand that. No, you understand it socially. You understand it as an intersubjective activity rather than a subjective activity or an objective activity, right? Um, and that, I think, if the YouTube atheist community, I guess, could just take on that term, intersubjective, right? Because it seems like when people use the word objective and when they define it within a YouTube video, what they really mean is intersubjective, right? So it's like agreement between people. So I mean, I think that this is really the benchmark of the sciences, for instance. Like the sciences agree between scientists, and you know that scientific consensus then becomes the accepted model, and et cetera. That's an intersubjective process. I don't think it should be understood as objective, right? This is the objective truth. No, this is the intersubjective consensus. That doesn't demean it in any way. I think it's just a more useful way of describing it. Now, this video is getting a little long, so I'm just going to cut to the chase. I think that the other confusion that you might be having about my position is that I think that there's a qualitative difference between the know-how and the know-that, right? This is another Habermasian kind of distinction. And it actually goes back to Greek philosophy, right? This is the distinction between the theoretical knowledge and practical knowledge, right? Which are two different but interlinked things. So theoretical knowledge, in a philosophical sense, refers to something like a driver's manual, right? And you can read this text and you can get meaning out of this text. Practical knowledge would be, are you a good driver? You know, actually being behind the wheel of a car, can you do that, right? That's practical knowledge. It's knowledge in practice that you wouldn't necessarily express linguistically or explicitly, but is implicit in something that you do. So driving, right, there's implicit practical knowledge in the act of driving, and there's explicit theoretical knowledge in a driver's manual, right? They're just two different kinds of knowledge. Now, it seems that you want the know that, right? You want the explicit explication of a system of rules or something. But the thing is, for me, the primary issue for ethics is the know-how, right? It's the practical knowledge. It's the implicit knowledge. Then the relationship between my ethical life and a book on ethics is very similar to me as a driver and a book and a driver's manual. You know what I mean? Like, I can get things out of that. It's not bad to read that. You know, it obviously doesn't hurt, you know. But at the same time, they're not identical to one another. And I think what everybody is really interested in when it comes down to it is how do ethics manifest themselves in practice, right? How do these implicitly inform our actions rather than constructing some set of rules that people should conceivably be governed by? Now, I mean, again, it doesn't mean that you can't do that, but it doesn't seem to me to be the primary focus of ethics. And I think that it's also it creates a very binding conception of ethics to think of things this way. Because what you're doing there is you're reifying a kind of implicit knowledge into an explicit knowledge. Now, when you take that theoretical knowledge and then presume to hold everybody by it, um, it feels to me like it feels to me to be implicitly dystopian, right? So if everybody followed, if we came up with a comprehensive system of ethics and everybody on the planet followed it and used it to regulate their behavior perfectly, you know what I mean? Like that would be a dystopian scenario. That wouldn't be a good world. Um, so it seems to me that you have to it that project has to be understood in its proper place, and it's not as the primary substance of ethics. Again, it's not a bad thing to do, but it shouldn't be the standard by which everything is held. So in other words, I would say that you want to say that the condition of moving forward is agreement. I think I want to say that the condition of moving forward is disagreement. Um, and yeah, and I'll gladly unpack that further. The video is just getting a little long, so I'm going to cut it here. But thank you very much, and I hope you respond. Have a good day.